had a wonderful weekend. Welcome into another week of First Take with these two lovelies.
What's going on?
Stephen A., Max Kellerman, I'm Molly Karam. How we feeling, fellas?
I'm feeling great.
Yeah?
Ready to go.
All right, let's do it. So if you thought the major storyline in New Orleans was going to be Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook playing on the same team for the All-Star game, think again, folks. The Pelicans made a splash yesterday, trading 3 players and 2 picks for Demarcus Cousins. So here's the deal. The Kings get number 6 overall pick Buddy Hield, Tyreek Evans, Langston Galloway, as well as a 2017 first-round pick that is a top 3 protected and a 2017 second-round pick. Now, a source telling our Ramona Shelbourne that the Pelicans feel like they can sign Cousins to an extension. Here's Cousins after the All-Star game last night.
All-Star questions first, please. Yeah. All-Star game questions.
What other questions we got?
Hey, Demarcus, can you kind of sum up your All-Star experience? And
oh, really?
Can you?
That's whatever.
Can you sum up your All-Star experience? What it was like for all the 3 players?
It was amazing, man. I enjoyed the city of New Orleans. You know, I love it here in New Orleans.
So if the playoffs were to start tonight, the Pelicans would be 2.5 games out of the 8th spot and the playoffs. Max Kellerman. Now that Boogie's a Pelican.
Yes.
Are the Warriors in a little trouble?
Did you say that with a straight face?
Are the Warriors in trouble?
Did they bring back, like, Punked or Candid Camera or something? Are we serious? Are the Warriors in trouble because a non-playoff team got an excellent player who, by the way, commanded so little on the trade market that you know, okay, of course, Vlade Divac and Vivek Ranadive got taken advantage of, as they do in every trade, because they're a terrible organization. You know, you hear a trade goes down with the Kings, you go, well, we know who got the better of that. So they got, you know, it was a heist, as Stephen A. just mentioned on SportsCenter. But are the Warriors in trouble? Like, what is the idea here that because they don't have Bogut anymore, they're susceptible to a team that can play in the paint, that can post up, and now they have a guy who can do that in Boogie? I mean, Anthony Davis, too, is a big, but certainly Boogie can do that. I mean, yeah, that addresses a kind of strategic weakness in the Warriors, I suppose, but they don't have a backcourt to take advantage of it. They don't have shooters. They don't have any perimeter players to go around those 2 guys. You're integrating a huge new piece in Boogie Cousins. We don't know how that's going to work. I mean, like, a team like Memphis might theoretically give a team like the Warriors problems because they have big guys who can play down low, and they have cohesion because they've played together for many seasons now, and a backcourt, etc. And no one really thinks Memphis would beat Golden State. So is Golden State in trouble because they just took advantage of Sacramento and added a top 10 player to Anthony Davis? No. Golden State is not in trouble. I don't care if they're the 8 and Golden State is the 1. They are not in trouble at all. They are in the opposite of trouble.
They're not in trouble, but I wouldn't be so dismissive and disrespectful towards the impact of this deal the way that you're being right now, because there have been times in NBA history that we've seen it. I remember back in 2007 when the Dallas Mavericks went 67-15 and the Golden State Warriors, led by Baron Davis and Steven Jackson, ran them out of the building in 6 games. What happened in that game? It wasn't that they had more skill than the Dallas Mavericks. Certainly, they were, you know, it was helped by the guard play of Jackson along with Baron Davis, and considering today's league, they're assisted in that regard. But what I remember more importantly than anything else was Golden State straight up punked Dallas. They got in their face and they dared them to do something about it. And I remember a time when, CP3 was being coached by Byron Scott in New Orleans, and you know, Byron Scott had an opportunity for CP3 and those boys to get back at Jason Kidd because of Byron Scott's relationship with Jason Kidd and what have you. CP3 went berserk, and you saw CP3, who usually doesn't talk much, literally screaming into the camera, "He can't guard me." And you just saw something like that. The reason why I would tell you don't summarily dismiss anything, because even though I believe in the Golden State Warriors and I believe in their skills, and I believe they went up against New Orleans, they take them out primarily due to guard play and the fact that all you have right now is Drew Holiday, because you don't really have anybody else along with those 2 dudes. You got to remember that playoff basketball slows down. It gets a bit physical, and the weakness of the Golden State Warriors is in the interior. So unfortunately, unfortunately, in a series like that, assuming both of them are bringing their A game with them, we have to make that assumption just for the sake of argument. If that were to happen, now we find ourselves completely dependent on the officiating and how the game is called. Because if you let them get physical and they take the ball inside, and your lone answer is a significantly undersized Draymond Green combined with Jaja Pajulia, all right, and JaVale McGee, you now have a problem. And that is where things can get interesting. Do they compare to the Golden State Warriors? Do the Golden State Warriors have nothing to worry about? No, because their strength doesn't have to respond to what New Orleans with Demarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis can throw at you. But go back to LeBron James and how they were ultimately able in Cleveland to overcome a 3-1 deficit. LeBron James takes the ball down low. He plays with his back to the basket. He gets a bit more physical in terms of posting up or whatever, and it dictated tempo. So that disrupted Golden State to some degree because you couldn't get out and run the way you like to and the way you're customarily accustomed to doing so, rather. And so when I look at DeMarcus Cousins with an Anthony Davis, again, a two-man crew ain't going to beat, Golden State. But at the same time, I do find myself intrigued by the possibility because I say to myself, how would the referees call this game? And Alvin Gentry was the former lead assistant in Golden State who kind of knows what they do. Do you have the horses to do it? If you can dictate and change tempo to some degree, you could make it a little bit uglier, slower, and who knows what could happen, just in terms of making it interesting.
They got a real coach, too, and they got twin towers that are no joke in their primes at a very high level. I mean, each one of those guys is a top 5 talent, Anthony Davis and now Boogie Cousins, whether or not they're both top 5 players.
Right.
What Boogie commanded on the trade market suggests he's not a top 5 player, but just in terms of talent and skill, he might be. I mean, it's tough to find a guy that special. And now they got 2 of them. So I understand you use them both. Let's assume that Gentry figures out the exact perfect way to use them. Everyone else around them plays perfectly. They get all the calls, and their rate of improvement accelerates by the postseason. What are they going to do? Take it to a Game 6 if they're lucky? I mean, they ain't getting to a Game 7, maybe a Game 6, but that means every single thing's got to break their way. This Warriors team, in a addition to everything else, is a finely tuned machine at this point. They already have integrated Kevin Durant, and they're killing everybody.
What seed can they get to in the West, Stephen?
Say what?
What seed could they get to in the West?
New Orleans. You have absolutely nothing to lose with 2 of the top 5 talents, arguably, in the game. Clearly, top 5 talent in Anthony Davis. There is no question about that. And the best big man in basketball in DeMarcus Cousins. Temperamental and all, you're talking about dudes that know how to be rough riders, that will get after it, especially when they have nothing to lose. And even though we all believe Golden State is coming out of the West, understand that you're playing with house money if you're New Orleans, and if you're Golden State, you're playing with all the pressure in the world. Not just because you're the 2-time Western Conference champions, not just because you have a nucleus in place that's already won an NBA championship, but coming this year with the addition of Kevin Durant, and all eyes are going to be on him because, after all, you left Oklahoma City after being in Game 7 of a Western Conference Finals to join this team because ostensibly you want to win a ring bad and you can't do it with Russell Westbrook. All that pressure, you just never know. It can get very, very interesting.
That's why if LeBron gets a little more help, maybe he and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love, if he gets healthy, and J.R. Smith gets healthy, and everyone comes together, and Kyle Korver gets hot, and they get something else, maybe the defending champions can get them in 7 games. Yeah. But not this squad.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying to you is that, and I'm not saying the squad itself, but I don't ignore that psychological stuff because in my 20-plus years of covering the NBA, I've seen that happen again. I've seen dudes fold because of the pressure. See, if you're playing against LeBron, if you're Golden State, it's not that much pressure. You already lost to him. He's the best in the world. Everybody was anticipating this matchup. So now it's just a matter of us playing ball. Whereas in the case of New Orleans against the Golden State, for example, with an Anthony Davis and the Demarcus Cousins, you're not expecting anything. They ain't supposed to.
You ain't getting anything either.
They ain't supposed to beat you. They ain't supposed to do anything. You got to tell you, if you could sit up here and tell me you've never seen a series or competition where a prohibitive favorite has flat out folded like a cheap tent, you know, then come talk to me.
In a best of seven, this would be unprecedented. A team like Golden State. I'll say this, though, in terms of what the Kings just did.
Right.
Going forward, if they hang on to Holiday or failing that, figure out to get, an undervalued commodity like a Bledsoe or whoever it is, and get a couple of 3-and-D wings. Next year, and they keep Boogie, a lot of ifs, but if they do all that, they got a real coach.
He's locked in through next year. He's locked in through next year. Yes.
Yeah.
Next year, then by the end of next year, you could have a real problem in New Orleans, but not this year.
And that's when he becomes a free agent after the following season. We want to hear from you guys about Boogie going to the Bayou. Should the Warriors be worried about Boogie in the brow in New Orleans? Go on Twitter and vote on that. We're going to keep the conversation moving, though, here. The most anticipated moment from this weekend's All-Star game was Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook and how they'd interact. We got our first answer in the first quarter when Durant threw an alley-oop to Westbrook that had the bench going crazy. Both Westbrook and Durant downplayed the significance of the alley-oop. Here's Russell.
First quarter, you and Kevin Durant, you pass the ball to each other, kind of, have some fun. It's all over now.
Yeah, he threw a lob. That's all that happened. He just threw a lob. It's basketball.
Yeah.
That's it.